I'm looking up at the sky. I'm wondering, how far away is the moon to the sun?
Well, hello there, Annie. This is John here. Thank you, first of all, for your great questions about astronomy. This is a wonderful, inquisitive mind that you've got here, and who knows, you could well be on your way to being a planetary scientist or an astronaut. So thank you for the great questions, first of all. First question, how far away is the moon to the sun? Well, the moon goes around the Earth, and we know that the Earth is 93 million miles away from the sun. So the moon is about the same because the moon goes around the Earth. So around about 93 million miles. They call that one astronomical unit. And if you were travelling at the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles a second, to travel 93 million miles would take you 8 minutes. My mum driving to the shop in her Mini in 1976 took about the same time.
I'm also wondering, how many stars are there in the sky?
How many stars are there in the sky? Well, just in our galaxy, the sun that you see in the sky, that's a star. And that's just one of the stars in our galaxy, which is like a big cluster, a big group of stars. And in that galaxy, there is 350 billion of them, which is rather a lot. And to try to make you understand what that number is and how big that number is, if you were to take every grain of sand in the world and turn that into a star, then that would give you the number of stars in the galaxy. For every grain of sand on the beaches of the world, there is a star. 350 billion. That's quite a lot.
I'm also wondering, how many galaxies are there in the whole entire space?
So your next question, how many galaxies are there in space? Well, in the part of the universe that we can see, which is about 45 billion light years across, well, there are just countless galaxies. 350 billion that we can think of, that we can see. In the whole universe, well, we think the universe runs on to infinity. It never ends, which is a strange thing to get your head around. Human beings, people tend to think of things having a beginning, a middle, and an end, and edges, things like that. That's a human thing. Out in the universe, well, it doesn't really work like that. We don't quite know how it works. So the number of galaxies, probably infinite. The ones that we can see in the observable universe, 400 billion, something like that. It's a big place, space.
How long could space be? If you could estimate it with something, you could, say how big it is compared to something else.
That's a very good question. How big is space? Well, if we thought of the planet Mercury as the size of a little peppercorn, then the size of the planet Earth next to that would be about the size of a ping pong ball. The planet Jupiter would be about as big as a space hopper. The sun that we orbit around would be about the size of a car. A big star would be about the size of a building. Some stars are so big that our sun next to it would just be a little dot, a tiny thing. But once again, how big is space compared to something else? Absolutely infinite. Absolutely. If you were to think of the solar system as the size of a Malteser, a little sweet, then the size of another part of space could be the size of a city. You can go on and on and on. It's back to that thing that the universe is infinite. It just sort of goes on forever, which is big.
How long has space been there for? I'm just wondering, has it always been there?
Your next question, how long has space been there for? Has it always been there? Pretty much, yes, it must have been. Astronomers think that the universe started with something called the Big Bang, which was a big explosion which threw lots of matter outwards, which all of the stars and planets formed from. And that's moving outwards. Astronomers can sort of measure and see that moving in an outward direction. So logically, it must have started all together in one lump. If it's moving out, logically it must have started all in one. And how it got to that stage, well, we just don't know. In fact, what was there before space was space. It might have been empty. It might have been different from what we see now. It might have just been a vacuum of nothing. But there was something there before space. There'll be something there after space as well, because in time, all of the production of stars will stop. They will all fizzle out. They'll all fade away. All that will be left will be the strange things we hear about called black holes. Eventually, they will evaporate, and all that will be left is just dark particles drifting through space. Nothingness. And what happens after that? Who knows what could happen to those dark particles drifting around through space? Maybe they settle and they stop, and maybe they congeal and form into something, and who knows, maybe another big bang, and space starts all over again.
I'm also wondering, why is there space? Why do we have space? Why can't it just be sky and loads of clouds? Why does it have to be space?
So your next question was, why does there have to be space? Why is it not just sky and clouds that we are so familiar seeing, blue sky and fluffy clouds? Well, that's very much a planet Earth thing. That's just what we see immediately around the planet Earth, because the planet Earth has atmosphere, and when the sunlight shines through the atmosphere of the Earth, what we see is a reflection of the blue part of the spectrum. That's where we get the blue sky from. That's the Earth's atmosphere causing that. And the clouds come from the fact that there is liquid water on the Earth, and much of that gets evaporated by the sun, and that goes up into the part of the atmosphere that forms clouds. And then sometimes they become heavier and form rain and thunderstorms and fall back into the oceans and the rivers and all over the back garden to make the flowers grow, and so the cycle of water continues. But once you get past the Earth's atmosphere, where there's no reflection of blue light and there's no clouds, then you just get into the fact where there is nothing. There is just the black of space. The colour of black means that no light is being reflected, no light is visible. But when it's got something to shine through, that's what gives us the blue. The Earth's atmosphere causes that. Beyond that, we're in space and vacuum, which just registers black. There ain't out there.
But why do they have to be that exact colour?
Space is black because there's nothing for the light to shine through, no atmospheres. Some parts of other planets could have different colours to blue. It might be green, it might be red. The planet Mars has a salmon pink sort of sky. The moon around Saturn, Titan, has a very murky orangey brown sky. There could be other alien planets far, far away that might have a purple sky or a yellow sky. Who knows what part of the spectrum could be reflected by the elements that might be present in atmospheres of different worlds.
Why do we even need stars? They don't really do anything to your life.
That's a good question. Why do we need stars? They don't really do anything to your life, you said in your question. They actually do quite a lot. The sun is a star, and that gives us all our light, all our heat, all of our energy. Life on Earth wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the sun. It would have nothing to go around, and nothing would grow. There'd be no photosynthesis. There'd be no sunny summer holidays. All stars really form when matter and dust and gas congeals together, and that creates gravity, which brings more matter and gas and dust together, which makes the star heavier, creating more gravity, and so that carries on and on and on and on until there is so much matter squashed together that so much pressure is formed that it sort of catches fire, a type of burning called nuclear fusion. That's what a star is, a big sort of nuclear explosion, which gives off all of the light and all of the heat that we see. That's why they twinkle, that's why they glisten. That's what the sun is doing. That is a huge amount of nuclear fusion going on. And between these two hand claps, the sun in the sky became 4 million tons lighter. That's the amount of energy it lost in the sunshine and the heat and light coming out. 4 million tons. So it's getting lighter all the time by 4 million tons. But don't worry, there's plenty left for another 4 billion years or so. The sun is a yellow star because it's middle-aged. It's sort of halfway through its life. Some stars are much older, and they're what we call red giants, because the part of the star that's left burns red. They're much older, those stars, red giants. Some stars are much younger and burn with more of a white-blue colour, very fiercely. So there's all sorts of different coloured stars. And if you look through an astronomy book, there'll be many lists of different star names that burn with a different colour. There's one star in the constellation of Orion called Betelgeuse. Some people call it Betelgeuse, which glows with a nice orange colour, because that's a red giant. Probably doesn't have long left, that one. Maybe in your lifetime you'll see that turn into a supernova. And we'll finish off with this. It's brilliant that you keep wondering. You say, I'm wondering, and you ask why, just why. This is very interesting because all human beings are basically made up of chemicals and matter that was once part of a dying star. And it was all just thrown out into the universe, but basically it all settled back and reformed into the planets and other nebulas. And basically, all life on Earth was once matter that was at the heart of a dying star. But yet it's all knitted back together to form living things, matter from stars which has congealed back together and which has consciousness and curiosity and which can ask questions like why, and it can say, I'm wondering, just like you did. So we are all matter from long dead stars which has formed back together and is now questioning and understanding itself. And on that note, I think we'll have a cup of tea.
Thank you for listening. It's nice to have someone answering my questions. I love space too. I've also got a telescope which I haven't used yet, but I'm a really big fan and I'd love to meet you. My name's Annie Furlong, and goodbye.